Hello and welcome to the AI Revolution Call with Cody Willard. That's me. Bryce Smith, he works with me at 10,000 Days Hedge Fund, that direction. And Johnny Boy, John Dio, who has been working in the AI industry.
Some number of years.
I like to, when we start these calls, we don't know if anybody watching has seen it before. John DeOliveira has been working in this industry since soon after I met him in 1995. So it's close to 30 years of AI industry experience. But even when we met in 1995, you were talking about the concepts of AI and ontological teaching.
Yeah. So
and, yeah,
I remember talking about it because I was actually started working in it in '98, but we met in something '95 or so, '94, I don't know.
yeah, maybe 94.
And when we had met, I had just moved back from Bermuda. I was there for working there as a programmer for like 3 years. And when you're in Bermuda, like if you're in New York or Boston, you might go for a weekend to Bermuda. But if you live in Bermuda, you go for a weekend to New York or Boston. So that's what I was doing one time when I went to a bookstore in Cambridge near MIT and found the book that was about the Psych Project, which that's what I ultimately went to work on and everything. So while I was down there, I was teaching myself about that project, and I was using the Lisp programming language to kind of imitate what they were doing in that project. And that's what actually eventually got me the job, was showing them that I was rewriting their code.
Now, what did Psych stand for, first of all?
CYC
is how you spell it.
For exactly, but it was like CYC. It was like encyclopedic knowledge.
Okay. And then, chicken and egg kind of thing here. Clearly, you guys were imagining what now exists 30 years ago.
Yeah, we couldn't have imagined how it would happen.
That's what I was going to go with. So it's almost like chicken and egg. You guys had to be creating code for shitty shit chips that barely did internet routing and didn't do videos and stuff like that. Did some text but eventually you guys were picturing that the chips themselves, the technologies, the bandwidth, all of it would develop over 5, 10, 15, 25, 30 years to the point where now NVIDIA is a $3 trillion company, and so is Microsoft, and they're the AI leaders of the current world.
Yeah, I think we could only imagine at the time Moore's Law, which was kind of doubling of power, doubling of performance of kind of CPU speed, or what the CPU is capable of, doubling that every 18 months or so. That's all we could imagine. We didn't imagine whatever. I mean, it's well more than that. And I don't know, you wouldn't count it per CPU anymore anyway, because you go and like run a whole bunch of them at once. But even the way those chips do it, and it's more, floating point operations instead of what CPU was doing as its kind of, I forget the way, instructions per second, you would say, for a CPU. So it was apples and oranges for that chicken and egg. And we're making a whole meal now. But so like we weren't even thinking in terms of chips. That's how different, like we were in the sense that we were was, we knew we were limited by them. And so that had us even approaching everything from a more symbolic way. It was like, how can we try to make the computer smart via math and logic rather than via just massive number crunching,
So, John, how important, it's interesting, if you were to go back in time, is it possible none of this would exist without the NVIDIA chips developing the speed and the ability to break down and do vectors and probabilities for next words, and sort of how our current version of AI works? what do you like when you look out? If you knew it was limited then, is it still limiting today? Is the chipsets the limiting factor still? Are the chipsets?
And so, first of all, we didn't know it was limiting. We were that it was limiting. That means that we didn't think about it and go, gee, if only it weren't limiting. We're like, that's the reality of things. That, we weren't like expecting it to become for that limit to go away. We knew it kept getting better, but we didn't expect it to. We expected it to get better. We didn't expect it to get better.
Is Psych still in Austin and running with 20 or 30 people? I mean, there was probably 15 or 20 when I came to meet you there.
Yeah, my mentor from Psychor sadly passed away in this past year, and he was, one of the great computer scientists. And I wouldn't have moved to Austin. So if you count all the where did every ping pong ball hit whatever else, we wouldn't have had. The family I had and the 20 years in Austin and it would have taken a different turn if not for, Doug Lennett's project. Yeah. So, but yeah, they're there and they do a particular thing. And there is still a blind spot that large language models have. And it's one that perhaps can be filled by the kind of work that I was doing. And the work that I do now, while it is mostly around large language models, the roadmap for it, the path is to use the other kind of AI, the kind I used to do.
Ontological AI, is that what you would call it?
Engineering, symbolic AI.
What is ontology? Tell people what ontology means.
An easy way to describe it is it's a taxonomy on steroids. So, a taxonomy is like a hierarchy of think of the animal kingdom or something. Right, sure. And start out at just animal and then blah, blah, and then dog and then Chihuahua. And then, Cody's new puppy. It's like,
no, I just took him home before the call.
Yeah. So that whole kind of hierarchy, except for an ontology, the hierarchy goes in 3D. It kind of goes off down in all directions. It's every which kind of relate a thing to another thing in a really describable way. And build a structure out of that. And that's very valuable. And it's still very valuable.
So I'm curious, is Psych not for profit? Is it a for profit? Have they raised money? I imagine, I know you don't work there anymore, but I'm just trying to sort of, it's interesting to think back 30 years ago, those guys were doing AI and here we are today. And you could start up, if you have the right pedigree, the right background, you could do a startup and say, hey, I'm Bullfrog. Actually, I saw an ad on CNBC for a stock, not for the product, but for the stock, Bullfrog AI. Don't buy that stock, everybody. I'm sure it's no good. I glanced at it quickly, $3, down 60% on the year. It just came public at 30. Stay the hell away from it.
Yeah.
But there are startups that are legitimate, not publicly traded. No, I don't know that there's a startup that's publicly traded in AI that's not just grifting. I'm not calling Bullfrog AI grifters. I'm implying it, but not calling it. Is Psych funded? Does it have $1 billion in funding? Is it a not-for-profit? What's its story?
Well, you know how OpenAI is a capped profit kind of company. So Psychor is capped profit, but not because they want to be.
That's good.
I was sitting there holding on to that joke that whole time, and yet going on about.
I know, my bad. It was I set you up slowly for that.
Yeah.
But
that's true. They're a small company that they were never. I mean, there's for every OpenAI, for every NVIDIA, there's about a billion small companies that and most of them don't stay in business. This was the small company that did stay in business. It started out as a nonprofit because it was part of a consortium way back in the 1980s, where there was this group of research projects that were trying to sort of at that time catch up with Japan in AI, and so it was part of this thing. But then that wasn't able to sustain it, so it became a for-profit research company, and it's small, and it makes enough to pay its folks, but I don't know much about it beyond that.
Do you know what is their revenue streams? What do they actually sell?
I know that they've had, after I left, kind of a like a doctor in a box product, as I would call it, where you could do the kind of question answering you do with ChatGPT, except that it didn't hallucinate, and it could tell you why it said what it said, and you could correct it or give a different opinion or whatever, and it would adapt its reasoning and it'd show you its whole chain of reasoning. So it was doing that kind of back in the when I was there, we were doing things like we could feed it a textbook, like a college level textbook in microbiology or chemistry or something, and then ask it questions, and it would answer, and it would answer the questions. Tell that to somebody nowadays, they're like, so what? That's like, GPT. And it's like, well, yes, but this was 1998. But to do it though took so much work at a like per book level to try to tell the computer, because you're not telling it like, here, let me just tell you everything there is, whole bunch of junk. I don't know how you're absorbing this information, but just take it, whatever. And I'm going to ask you later. No, it was more like fact by fact. Tell it a thing. You get this? Prove to me you know what I meant by that.
You know what, John? It's interesting you say that, because like we've created several GPTs in ChatGPT, including the Cody GPT. We uploaded 12 years worth of my trading with Cody analysis, PDFs and books. And
yeah, I remember telling you about that.
Yeah. And we've done it with our Tesla book. And we've done it. I even helped a friend the other day who is an administrator at a rural high school system. And he needed to create a special education program, like something that the teachers, students, and parents could ask questions like, hey, I need my student to improve in reading and he's special ed, or should my student be in special ed, and these types of things. What should I do if I have a violent student in special ed? And we uploaded all, like several different PDFs that are like the state and federal guidelines and rules, and we created GPT, and it all works really well, except when it hallucinates. And it is interesting that you don't know exactly what it's doing when you're like, hey, here's all the information, do something with it and create a product that can answer questions. And it does a pretty darn good job, frankly, but it's still hallucinating.
Yeah, I'm just trying to solve the problem, like while we speak about it here. And I'm thinking, because I know this hallucination does happen. One thing is make sure you're adjusting the what's that setting for creativity, kind of.
What's the word, Bryce? What's it called that you can control the amount of flexibility? You do know the word. When John says, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's it. But
like
you can control how much variability,
creativity, whatever. It's like that kind of word. And so you turn that down. The other thing is that when it does it is when it goes back, when your data doesn't have the answer, or it doesn't find the answer in your data. And so it turns back to the language model, and that doesn't really have the answer either. Sometimes it does, but if it doesn't, then it is going, let me, yeah, I know that one.
I fill that in. Boeing is partnered with Tesla to make SpaceX. And you're like,
not exactly.
That's quite how that happened.
Yeah. So
the other thing you mentioned, John.
Wait, because I'm telling you that what to do. That's the problem. If that's the problem, I think there's two parts to this answer to make that better. One is make sure you're getting the RAG to work as well as possible, the retrieval augmented generation. And there's a needle in the haystack problem. I don't know if you heard that terminology, but it's like when you give it a whole lot of data, for it to actually kind of find it among all of what's there, and that comes with how it's chunked and where it's loaded up, and also just the different language models some of them are better at it than others, and so use the right stuff there. The other would be include in your data that you give it things you don't know, like if it's about this, that, or the other. You have the following things. You do not have an answer, and you give it all that. Now you gave it a thing to land on where it doesn't have to go look further into the language model. It's like in your own stuff to say. So you're not going to catch everything, but you catch much more of the edges, with that. Anyway, I just thought of that.
No, that's exactly right. And we've had that experience when we talk to the GPT for our Tesla book. It generally finds the specific data we're asking about, but occasionally it needs I found the word temperature lowered, so it will reduce the hallucination.
That's the word. That's the word.
Bryce, you knew that word.
And you know what to do there. And the other thing would be to just have the kind of overall upfront disclaimer that, hey, if this doesn't sound right, go double check it, because that sometimes happens or whatever. It's still the thing is worth it. It's for what it does do. It's super cool.
A former executive at Goldman Sachs, who's gotten to be a friend of Bryce and mine, sent me their recent AI write-up. I'll share it with you, John, and I can't share it publicly with everybody watching, but if you can get your hands on it, read this. It's called Top of Mind, and it's it brings up a topic that you just mentioned a little bit, the logic. 30 years ago when you were trying to create ontological AI with Psych, it was rooted fundamentally, exclusively, correct me if I'm wrong, on logic, rules, and like succinct mathematical, scientific, rule-based knowledge. And today we're using vectors to create the most probable answer with the most probable word that would fit after the word it just used, and these things. And it struggles with math. ChatGPT does a great job when I tell it, hey, make a story about my daughter battling dragons in the land of Lincolnia. And it's fantastic. It can create images for that book or that story. Eventually, it'll create video for that story. But if I ask it to do a hardcore math problem, it still struggles. It's not based completely on logic.
Yeah, it's getting better. It's not based on logic, but it's getting better. And it's better at math now than any of us sitting here. It certainly can still make dumb mistakes, but it can also get higher on the SATs in math than any of us would, I believe. Oh, except for you, Cody, right? Yeah. So, Cody, you couldn't count how many pages the test was. So, I'm kidding. No,
I don't think I could get to the number of questions on the test, but the number of pages, actually, the number of tests in the test, I could get that answer every time.
So I'm proud to point out that my daughter beat me on the SATs. But it's getting to where it can do those kinds of things. It didn't come about it in a way that could normally explain. There's another kind of AI now that kept coming out of Google that is like scoring super high on the Math Olympiad, which is
I saw that it got second place. I don't know. There was another article I read.
Yeah,
Google got second place in the Math Olympics using its math AI.
Yeah,
and it essentially, it got like its top 0.001% of all math.
Yeah, which reminds me of the old AI joke we used to kind of tell when I was first working in AI.
AI is famous for its humor. Please continue, John.
Yes, it wasn't the AI telling the joke; it was the AI people making the joke. But it's
also not famous for their humor.
AI nerds and their humor. No, it was that. It is kind of like, how do you know something's AI? Like, how do you define AI? It's something that doesn't work, because once it does, you stop calling it AI.
Then it's just a system.
Then it's just some, advanced program or something. It's like and that was true for decades. Every time some problem that was up until then, like, oh, it can't beat a human at chess, and then it does, and then it goes, oh yeah, but that's not AI, and it's like, oh, it was AI before it could do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what with the math stuff that we're like, oh, it can't be the best math person in the world yet. Okay, well, neither can I. So it's the combining of these capabilities, being able to not just answer a math question on a test, but know when to bring math into what's going on. That's the kind of thing.
John, Bryce told me for weeks that Google's Gemini sucks compared to GPT. And I was like, dude, they're basically the same. And then I went and played with it a little bit more hardcore the last few days. And the man is right. Gemini sucks compared to GPT.
Yes.
I can't fathom that we're talking about Google being able to do better math than ChatGPT, OpenAI.
Different Google, not Gemini.
Okay, but Google itself, the umbrella alphabet.
More like DeepMind for that piece of it. Or
so that's actually where I'm going with this. Can you talk a little bit about where does DeepMind fit into Gemini, if at all? How much do you think Google probably has under the hood that they're using internally to do AI, that they're using AI internally, or they've got functionalities and super AI stuff that they're not releasing into Gemini yet? And why? Why are they not getting this stuff out into the public more quickly? Yeah. Is it because of safety concerns? Please continue.
So I think that I don't see yet a real big overlap with DeepMind and like Gemini. DeepMind was a pre-LLM. It came before the language model thing. They were doing things with, win at Go, which people, when it happened, those people who knew how hard Go was as compared to chess thought Go wasn't going to be, it was going to take another 20 years or something. And when they went and did that, people were blown away. And then they did the thing with proteins and the genome, the gene and protein stuff. They mapped all of the proteome, I think, which is a level up from the genome. So they had all this very cool stuff going on, but it was disconnected technology-wise. And they started doing all the Gemini stuff because, hey, everybody else is doing language models and we better do it. And I think they're yet to reach the point where they bring the real power together and screw up the release on those in combination, which they will do once they're able.
But would you say then that DeepMind is probably then better at math and rules-based logic AI than Gemini large language model is?
Yeah, still it's not the rules. It's not using kind of the stuff I had been doing, and I'm not saying what we were doing was better. It's just different, but it's not symbolic so much. But it was more, I believe it was using generative adversarial networks. And the coolest thing about that is, imagine inside this thing, inside the program, there are these two AIs that took either side of the game board and are playing against each other and trying to get the other one to be better. And every time the other one's better, and they catch it being better, they figure out what about it. They use that information on the other side of it, and it's just this competition, like internally back and forth.
And that is all basically machine learning at that point.
Yeah. But it's like, I still think it's just so cool.
Bryce, questions, comments? I've got more if you don't.
No.
What about me?
John, you're the one who has the answers. We're the people.
I get to ask questions.
All right, what do you want to know?
So, did you hear? See, it's almost turned it into a. Did you hear that? About Llama 3.1?
Yes.
And
the new release
and mixed
that
for
Meta
log
did last week.
Yeah, and so it is. They're saying, I haven't played with it myself yet, essentially at the level of GPT-4, and it is open source.
Bryce, you've been playing with it, right?
Yeah, I've used it a lot. It's good.
It's better than Gemini, as good as GPT?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, definitely better than Gemini.
It's up there anyway. It's like, I don't know that it beats GPT-4o or in Claude, but it's like, it's now right with them, and it's free and it's uncensored, and you take your own copy and do whatever you want with it. And like that.
John, what's the revenue model for Google, for Meta in
what I heard it was
LLM?
Yeah, I heard something about that, and not exactly revenue model so much as like, why did they do this? Like, why are they open sourcing? And it was that there was a I forget what device. They didn't have a smartphone at some point, did they? No. There was some device that they were kind of coming out alongside everybody else, and then they were caught flat-footed by not having kind of the technology that it would rely on. And so they didn't want to be in a situation again where the technology that their stuff would rely on, which is, so they're saying, hey, the LLM, that's not our stuff. That's just going to power our stuff. And so they wanted to kind of make the next Linux.
What Meta said was Mark Zuckerberg wrote a whole letter when they rolled out Llama 3.1 last week, and they've always been like handicapped in essence by Apple, because anytime they build some new functionality to their apps, they have to get approval from Mother Apple to roll it out. And Mark Zuckerberg said that's been like extremely discouraging for them as a company over the years. And so they said, with the next generation of technology, we're going to control the platform and we're going to make it open source to everybody. And we're not going to like hamstring and try to like have our fingers in every piece of technology that goes out on our platform.
How's that different from like Google and Chrome? You know,
Chrome is not open source, for one thing.
Is it really not?
I don't think so.
Well, when I use Microsoft Edge, it's
why would you ever do that? What?
When
you actually use Microsoft Edge?
I don't use Microsoft as a. Do you use a Windows machine? Because I'm gonna pick on you.
I don't use a Windows machine except when I'm forced to on my simulator.
Yeah, I don't use it regularly. But whenever I use Microsoft Edge or Arc browser, which is what I mostly switch to now, they're built on Chromium. Chromium is the underlying technology. Like if you ever look at Edge and Chrome, Edge and Chrome, like they have the same menus all the way on down into it. They're the same thing. So like, I think it's open source. If not, like the underlying of it is open source. And like, that's my point, is it's an example similar to what Facebook's doing.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I guess where you're almost, the problem where this breaks down in my mind with Meta's using open source, and for example, in what you're talking about, is Google's going to get some ads displayed somewhere along the way and make some money by tracking you better using Chromium or what's someone else doing that.
That's their mistake.
I'm not sure Meta's doing that. I think I was looking for this book. Bryce, you must have my copy of Information Rules.
Yeah, I do.
If you guys have not read it, I highly recommend it. I'm sure I've given it to you before, John, if you haven't had it on your own.
I had it, yeah.
And it is, it's written by Hal Varian, who unless he's no longer, he was like the chief scientist at Google after he wrote that book. About 10 years later, he was hired over there. And there's another very famous author in it. I can't think of his name right now. At any rate, you create open source and open platforms, open standards to become the de facto standard, to become the generalized standard of the industry. And I think that is what Meta's picturing. And Zuckerberg probably is not sure all the ways they might be able to monetize that in 5 or 10 years, but being the standard for small LLMs around the world that are built exclusively on Llama, because it's the best open source LLM out there, there's got to be some value, trillions of dollars of value in that, if this vision of AI taking over the world in a good way develops.
They don't have to be the open source model in order to be successful either. They could be one of, say, 3 or something, because to them, what matters is that what they do gets picked up by enough others that there's an ecosystem around it to kind of keep it going and to enrich it and so forth. So there's a payoff there. I did, first open source that I did was I open sourced the ontology part of the overall Psych system when I created a thing called OpenPsych. It was a project, I
remember that,
funded by DARPA, and it got picked up by, it was downloaded at the time like 40,000 times in the first couple months, and it was kind of popular among, like, you find it in a lot of research papers, and it was about getting it out there so that there's others kind of participating in what happens with it.
John, I want to ask you one other question about Psych, if I could, but I just thought of something. That you used the word ecosystem. I've always heard it pronounced ecosystem.
As it was coming out of my mouth, I was like, I should say ecosystem.
But you know what? It gave me a deep thought. It's like like Llama is sort of an echo. It wants an ecosystem built around Meta's ecosystem. ECHO system is what it once built, where it's like other developers are echoing around the Llama, but the Meta ecosystem is the Llama and its apps. And
I think he's got a
devices.
theme for his next newsletter.
I literally, yes, I just wrote it down. This will be my next tradingwithcody.com if you want to read that article.
Just because
Go on
John
over
can't
there.
pronounce things, we'll just.
John, I have no original ideas except when I hear someone mispronounce something, and then it kicks in. Bryce, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I think part of what Meta's doing too is that by open sourcing their the community can work on it, improve it, offer corrections, and help protect it and things like that. Make sure there's no security vulnerabilities. But Meta has an existing business, and then they take that the operating system, which is like Llama 3.1, build that into the products they already have, and it makes their existing products better. And then they've got the benefit of all the free labor and corrections from the whole research community behind them when they build it back into Meta.
I can't wait to get the Meta glasses.
Yeah.
Because now, before it was going to be like, well, yeah, but what they're going to make it run on their AI. It's like, but if their AI is one of the best, but now still
Right.
this doesn't get them out of being the Facebook company that listens in on every last thing that you do and is going to take everything about you and use it in whatever, nefarious way that they want.
Doesn't Google do the same? Doesn't Apple probably going to build their
No,
AI
no.
on the same?
No, Google does the same. Yes. Apple really tries.
Apple's trying to convince me that they're not, but I'm less than convinced, John.
Well, I think of it this way. It is a big risk for them to not be if it were to come out that they were being in some way dishonest about that, and it's what they've decided to base themselves on, it would be very bad for them. So they have to at least do it well enough to seem like they're really doing it.
Yeah.
I think so. Apple is way different from the, Google.
All right. I buy that. I think that's fair.
Do you think Google backtracking on their decision to delete cookies could have anything to do with like their overall AI strategy and the fact that they're
Bryce, you're going to need to introduce that topic a little better. It's a new news item. Tell people what it is you're talking about. I think it just came out yesterday, right?
A couple days.
It was last week, but
okay. Well, still tell people what you're talking about.
Cookies, when you go to a website or John can explain it better than I can.
They track you.
Yeah, they track your activity across the web. And when you use Chrome, that's the source for all the cookies. And then they can, other advertisers and other websites can use the cookies about you to target you better. And so Chrome was going to eliminate that capability and had said so, I don't know, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, or something like that. And then only last week they decided that they weren't going to eliminate cookies. And I'm just, for the first time just now, I was like, well, I wonder if that has to do with the fact that they're losing this AI race. And they're like, well, we need, at least keep cookies going. And that way it helps our advertising revenue on the search side. I don't know. That crossed my mind. So.
Well, this actually goes back to a question I was going to ask Cody about, or kind of respond to something he said, where Cody, you were talking about, Google and the ad model and so forth. I'm thinking like, what is the chance that advertising being on your stuff will be the model that works in the coming 10 and 20 years just because it was in the previous 10 and 20 years?
The opposing model would be subscription based.
I don't know. Well, there could be a lot of opposing models.
Like how else can if you don't charge someone or use their eyeballs as a vehicle to deliver ads, how do you make money?
So let's say that there are these AIs and, you're talking with them and everything. And that, as you talk to them, they are learning new things from you and you're going to get a cut of what they learn from you because there's every single stream carries with it, kind of it's on a blockchain and it's picking up on, this is the trace back on where we got that knowledge from. What's up?
It's a revenue share model.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. It's always Bryce can say in 2 words what it takes me 2 paragraphs.
It seems to happen more than once a call.
I was tracking with you, John. I know what you're saying.
So, John, yeah, I mean, I think you're on to something there. Clearly, revenue streams and winning revenue streams evolve over time. That being said, there's also this so Netflix was like, we're not doing ads ever. And then they're like, okay, we'll do a cheaper price one with some ads. And then eventually there will be free Netflix if you'll watch 17 minutes an hour of ads, which happens to be the Fox Business broadcast television model that I was paid by for years. So these things cycle a little bit. So yeah, I could see for a while the invasive and all-knowing ads from Google being replaced with revenue streams and subscription models, and then in 20 or 30 years the new invasive eyeball thing comes out.
I just don't know if you consider what's going on with AI and just admit it, incredible advances. Despite however much more happens, what's happened has been unbelievable. Are we being as curious and as creative, with our business models, with our revenue models? We're just going to say that, oh, it's always pendulum swing between this and that, or I don't expect Google to change, because typically it's very hard for a company. They suffer from success. It's like, what are they going to do? Shoot themselves in the head? They're making all their money that way. They're not going to go and do something. The company that's really good at shooting themselves in the head is NVIDIA. And look what that did for them.
Yeah.
So if you're willing,
I think people would say Apple was good at shooting itself in the head. Steve Jobs famously talks about that and cannibalizing your own business.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you're brave enough to experiment with change and not say, I can't do that because it's going to hurt what we have already done and what we already have. And so I don't know what it's going to be, but I believe the change is going to happen. This stuff is too different for it to just fall back on the same stuff, because if it falls back on the same stuff, I'm going to have my AI watch the commercials for me and even the show and tell me how the show was, but
Bryce, are you about to say something? Because I was going to just mention real quickly, unless you are.
What?
Whatever you're about to say.
Well, really, we haven't said it out loud, but the big news was that ChatGPT introduced Search GPT, and it's not out to the public yet. But that is now a direct threat competitor to what Google's core business is.
John, I like your skeptical face. Why?
Yeah, well, it had a bad rollout, but they'll keep at it, I guess. I don't know how different it is from Perplexity, which was already the big difference is who they are. It's like OpenAI doing it.
That's what I was about to say. I mean, it's just brand name at that point. Nobody's heard of Perplexity, and everybody's heard of OpenAI.
Well, Perplexity people are starting to hear of because they're getting.
You know what I'm saying? OpenAI, you can ask 90% of people who are familiar with AI at all. They know 99%. If you're familiar with AI at all, you know what OpenAI is. I'd say 20% of people who know what AI is have ever even heard of Perplexity.
No, Perplexity is at the 1% level. But the funny thing is, you say your if is a big if, because there's 45% of people who never heard of GPT, in the US or something. So it's even OpenAI, which is the big name, they're not going to go take over Google.
And by the way, anybody watching, if you've got questions for John, Bryce, or moi, post a comment on. Are we on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube? I'm assuming.
Yes,
your comment should feed into our system here, and we'd be happy to answer it. I'll get AI I'll feed your question into Cody GPT and have it. I wrote an article today for Trading with Cody subscribers about how, what did we call it, Bryce? The Tesla Optimus Skills Store will mimic the Apple App Store. After I wrote it, I sent it into GPT and said, make sure get this down to 1,000 words and reword anything that's not perfectly clear.
And it did. No, it's
Nailed
good.
it. And I said, do it in the style of that Cody Willard revolutionary guy. And because we have a GPT, it actually did pretty well I tested it, Gemini 4.0 and Cody GPT. The Cody GPT was by far the best one for my purposes.
Yeah.
Gemini was, like Bryce has hinted at, it was all right.
Yeah.
And then
Make a
GPT-4 was
make a GPT. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say you can make the equivalent of like a GPT in Claude, and I think it's better at kind of more natural writing.
Interesting, Bryce. I've been waiting to talk to you about that, Bryce. You know, can we do that in Gemini? Can you create a Cody GPT in Gemini? Can we create a Cody GPT in Claude? Can we create a Cody GPT in Anthropic? Can we create a Cody GPT in Llama? Not that I want to be everywhere, but I'd like to test how well they understand what I'm trying to do.
Well, John, you can go. You
I
answer.
was just gonna say that they wouldn't even call it that. All you got to do now is like if you get one of these things that has enough context length, you just load in a bunch of documents to it and
just go. It's like for that discussion with Claude, it would answer my questions based on the 12 years of writing I put into it before.
So it'll fit. They're at, is it 128K? That might not be even enough for you, but it'd be a thing to try.
Okay.
128. It's interesting. It's not 128K like 128,000 bytes.
Yeah, I knew you weren't talking 128 kilobytes.
It's
So
128,000 words. So
that's not enough.
Well,
I bet, Bryce, we've got 12 years of articles and an average of say 3 or 4 a week. That's
how many megabytes?
And an average of 1,000 words per article. We do 200,000 words a year.
How much in text? How many words?
200,000 words a year over 12 years.
Yeah, no, it's not going to fit at all. You want more the GPT thing where it pulls in what it needs, kind of thing. Yeah.
Don't you think, John, too, that regardless of just the raw performance of the models, ChatGPT probably has an edge in terms of just overall functionality, like the ability to build custom GPTs so easily. And I don't think.
Okay, so for functionality like that, yes. But if you take like a combination of using like Llama 3.1 on Grok, not Grok from Elon Musk, not XAI Grok, but the chip. They have a service, Yaku or GROQ. That together with Llama 3.1 will fly.
But I don't think same thing. It doesn't have you can't build custom GPTs. You can't upload documents. You can't take pictures like that.
Yeah, it's not as easy. I mean, I do it with open source ones, but you got to be a programmer.
Right.
You know.
Are we, anybody else still convinced Sam Altman's days at OpenAI are numbered?
I don't think.
I say by the end of next year, he's out.
Oh, you with your predictions that are so far in the future. I don't even know.
It's just 18 months. That's nothing.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I promise you, I will point out that I made that prediction if it's right, and I'll forget that I made the prediction if it's wrong. So that part, I can't argue.
So I would say that they better. I've noticed that as these other things come out that are up at their level, that the talk about how good their next stuff is going to be just keeps kind of turning up, getting louder. And so I wonder whether that's we got to see what comes out. If GPT-5 blows us away, then that'll be interesting.
Someone's got to come up with a new Grok and Grok, K and Q. We can't have this every time. Literally, Bryce and I will be on a phone, and at least once a week, he'll say something like, if that were Grok, and I'm like, which one, K or Q?
Well,
and it's always Q. Nobody
differently.
uses the XAI Grok, apparently.
That's going to be by the end of the year. They have now the most high-powered NVIDIA supercomputer of anybody, the XAI folks. And so that's why they're claiming that Grok is going to be surpassing folks by the end of this year. So I don't know. I can't judge. I can't, got to see what happens. There's so many, there's a lot of players, interesting things going on. I'm still waiting. I just heard that the audio aspect of GPT-4o is going to start rolling out next week. Now it's going to be a slow rollout, and I'll be like last on the list. But when that comes around, just this notion of being able to talk to the AI without any delay and just have a real, just back and forth conversation, I'm just going to like invent new stuff. The world is over.
All right. Last words, last comments.
John,
yeah,
you mentioned on ontology a couple times. The Palantir CEO Alex Karp says, like in his words, you've got to have an ontology. And I don't know how much you know about Palantir, but is that honest? Do you believe him that you have to have an ontology?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
I do, you and I we've talked about Palantir, and I'm from what I can tell, I'm kind of impressed with them, and getting more so like with what they're doing, but especially in B2B or business applications and things like this, a company needs to have really defined specifically what it is they're up to. And if you're like defining your business processes and your supply chains and these kinds of things, it's this thing you're engineering that you don't want to build it like a Baltimore bridge. So you want to make it like it needs an ontology. Yes.
Can you just put it in layman's terms for us though? Like if we understand we can use ChatGPT as is, now you're an enterprise. The ontology is another layer between your enterprise data and the LLM that helps you manage the data better.
Whenever you use the LLM right now, it's almost like you're using Google. You say something, it says something back, and you're like, all right, thanks, I guess. I don't know where that came from. And it's very ethereal. It's like ephemeral is what I mean. It's on to something else a second later. It's not really retained. You're not building upon it. So that it's a useful thing for sure. But these other pieces, like having a Cody GPT, that's just a piece of what you're doing, is giving you, is anchoring you in like real knowledge, as opposed to just this sort of scattered, gee, I guess it might be true thing. And there's another aspect of that. This is anchoring you in real concepts that stuff can rely on and stuff can get built on.
Interesting. Yeah. Palantir is like, I think for a lot of investors and just members of the public there's like a love-hate, and a lot of people just don't understand it. It's a black box. It's often referred to as that. And so I'm always trying to learn more about it because I don't know. I don't really have an opinion of it. We don't own the stock.
Isn't it true, right? Like I was just sitting here thinking the same thing. I'm like, I just can't get my head wrapped around. I'm not sure I have an opinion on Palantir. It's like, and we probably need, like it's not like we've not spent time on this. We have worked on understanding Palantir. We've been to their website. We've watched their CEO talk and listened to their conference calls, and and so we, it's like the sort of the Warren Buffett thing. It's like if you don't understand it, don't buy it, and that's kind of.
Well, are you able to get access to that's not through them, through information about their customers and how their customers are using it and how well it's going for them?
For example, I was speaking with a guy at used to work at the world's largest hedge fund. And he talked about, he was an executive there, and he talked about how they, just in passing, he was talking about that they had been using Palantir for some of their AI ideas. And the hedge fund canceled the contract with Palantir because they were not getting it enough value to justify.
That's good data. So like it's things like that, it's like you find a couple more, maybe there are some that are, I would say the opposite, but if you hit on a couple in a row,
clearly are, because they've got a growing customer base and the churn isn't 100% or something.
No, but it might be snake oil. But it just doesn't. The idea of it is not snake oil to me. It's very legit what they're claiming to be doing.
Interesting.
John, your last words. I'm getting the very last words today.
So like, Cody, I don't know how much music you're making lately, but if you come around to trying to mix in some of this AI stuff into what you do, the new versions of Suno and of Udio are like really good. It's like impressive. So And now that they do stemming, it's like they'll go and you make a song and it'll go, okay, yeah, but break it apart so I can have the vocal over here and the drums separated out, and I want to change this about it and whatever.
That's interesting, because there's many times I've over the years, I do still have, not a very active, but I have a rap, rock, country, folk fusion band thing. It only exists sometimes, but we have sampled. We've probably written and recorded close to 100 songs over the years, and probably 15 to 20 of them have outright samples on them from sampling. Donovan, from 1967 song I love from Donovan called Tin Man. And anyway, so we do samples a lot, and sometimes I will listen to a song and I'll be like, I wish I could just strip out the beat and then build a whole song around that. But the guy, they're like got guitars, and even at the intro, I can't get that beat singled out. And there's so many times I want to single out the one instrument or the guitar riffs on something and then layer it over something else. I need to start. I still play music a lot, but I don't write music very often anymore. I'm going to get ChatGPT to write my articles. I'll get whatever Mudio or whatever the company Udio, I'll get it to write my music. I'm just going to basically do nothing. I'll pay Bryce to be the face of everything.
It's pretty cool. Like, you go in and say, like, you give it the lyrics you want, or even an idea toward lyrics you want, and it's making the stuff up. And where you were going and doing samples, I think some of that comes from, that's what was there. That's like that was the paint that was available to mix with and put on your canvas. And now there's just a new kind of paint.
Yeah, that's true. There's a whole new medium of paint to use. That being said, I think what happens is, this is what happens. I'll hear a riff or a song that I have loved since I was a kid. Oh, there's another one. Believe it or not, I'm walking on it. Who's that?
Yeah, it was a TV
Mike Post.
song.
Yeah, American's Greatest. That was one of my favorite shows as a kid. That song I've loved forever. I remember trying to record that on the radio on a cassette when I was like 6, waiting for it to come on. And so we sampled that and made actually a really funny song. It's not even funny. I like the song. It's a good song. I didn't do anything but sample and make the mix, and then Moses and his creativity turned it into this amazingly cool thing. At any rate, it wasn't just that random paint. I was like, man, that is some good paint I want on this piece.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes,
my final words will just be peace and love, harmony. Can't we all
Bryce,
get
what are you
along?
going to say, Bryce?
It's the biggest earnings week for the S&P all quarter. We have 5 of the 7 Max 7 reporting, and the whole AI boom depends on them. So I think we should end with earnings calls, and my bet is that Meta and Amazon beat. I think Apple and Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, and NVIDIA beat, and I think Meta, Apple, and Microsoft missed. Those are my bets.
All right. And not just because of their AI businesses, obviously. You're talking about
there's a lot else
over the last 90 days. All of Meta's business over the last 90 days was better than the 16 or 32 analysts or 46 analysts, sell-side analysts on Wall Street have modeled out, and that Yahoo and other companies have taken of which they've taken the consensus. And you're saying you think those numbers that are reported will be better than that consensus for Meta, NVIDIA, and Amazon, and that Apple and Microsoft will miss. Last week we had, who reported last week? Google
and Tesla.
And they beat, but the market didn't really like it that much.
Yeah, still sold out.
And so, Bryce, in addition to predicting what the numbers are, we pitched Robinhood's management on an idea. And if any of you guys are out there watching and you want to build a great business, here's the idea. Investors, retail investors especially, should be able to bet on whether a company meets or beats or misses. And it does. You're not, like, as a hedge fund investor or as a retail investor, if you buy Tesla thinking they're going to beat earnings. Sometimes they beat earnings and the stock goes down 20% the next day. That happens all the time for various
so it'd be
reasons.
it would be a safer
That's
investment.
it. I just want to bet on whether or not the last 90 days of business at Meta was better than these guys expected. And if I could make that bet, it's a safer, it's truly just betting on the stock is a derivative, at least one, if not two derivatives down from what that earnings report is going to be. But you also have to mess with what were actual expectations, what were the whisper numbers from the buy side guys who run hedge funds who don't necessarily believe the sell side consensus model. You also have to wonder about what the actual broader market is going to do the next day. You have to wonder about what the guidance is going to be. Like there's 4 or 5 different major factors on how that stock trades the next day. But if you could simplify it into what Bryce was just predicting, his simple prediction of these 3 companies will be better than expected on the earnings number, or, throw in the revenue number too. You could give a different layer. You'd be like, hey, and if they give guidance, you can make a bet. Will the guidance be better than expected? Whatever. You could, but it'd be a very simple, non-derivative way of betting on the actual results of the quarter.
While it sounds like it's simply, there's only 3 possibilities, they beat or they meet or they don't beat, whatever. But actually, the thing that makes it more like variable than just the 3 is, well, what do I get for that? It's like, well, you're going to guess that they beat. And it's like, so that's obvious. Well, of course we pay you out for it, but we only
exactly. So yeah, John, that's right. It would be sort of like going to a horse race and you place your bet when hardly anybody's bet. And it looks like you've got 30-1 odds. And then by the time the gates open, now all of a sudden it's like 4-1 odds. And you're like, no, but that's because
all you got to do now
more and more people made that bet. And that's, yes, it would just be pure, like based on, hey, lots of people are betting. And then of course, CNBC would be reporting, hey, on the Robinhood app, everybody's betting that Google's going to miss their earnings.
So people bet on the election. Is there anything against having a betting market on a stock?
Probably. I mean, look, the SEC with stocks has lots and lots of like very explicit rules, but I don't think it would take much lobbying at all, or even just a phone call and be like, hey, is that kosher? And probably you could get it. You got to create a betting market
approved. You got to create a betting market. It's like existing betting markets, except it's one that, passes like approval and all that. I mean, it sounds like a super cool idea. And you could get like, if you even got like, 1/100% of people to put some of their money in the direction of that one, and then you only took 100% of what, happened on the bets, you'd be a billionaire.
I don't know about a billionaire, but you'd make some good money.
The market's pretty big.
I think it would be a good business. Bryce and I, we've even I don't know, maybe 6 months after we pitched it to them, Bryce sent them an email. He's like, by the way, I really do think you ought to look into doing this. And then Bryce, didn't we see someone had something that was similar?
There are some kind of websites out there that you can do something like that, but not like a full-throated earnings bet thing that's easy that ties into your brokerage account or,
Yeah.
It's probably some
all right. So, but where I was going with that is, so Bryce, it doesn't help anybody to make a prediction about the earnings in the last 90 days. You got to tell them up or down. The stocks, are the 3 who beat going to go up? Are the 2 who missed going to go down? What's the bet on that?
Yeah. Nvidia up, Amazon flat, and Meta down, because Meta always goes down after earnings. Microsoft will go up even though they miss. And Apple, I don't know.
Flat.
Apple flat, yeah.
The only one I would disagree on is I think Amazon will probably have good enough numbers. It'll go up. And I would say if NVIDIA does what it looks like they should be doing after listening to Grok, Elon just mentioned the other day that xAI now has the largest cluster of NVIDIA, 100,000 NVIDIA chips in a working cluster. Tesla on their earnings report Elon talked about they are buying every NVIDIA chip, and they know they can't get their hands on any extra NVIDIA chips. They can't even get on as many as they want. And it is in, quote, Elon said, it is in NVIDIA's self-interest, like to raise the prices as high as the market can bear. And that is capitalism. And I would expect that the numbers at NVIDIA are probably going to be outrageously good again. Yeah. And I don't know if the stock, so much has been priced in, of course, with a $3 trillion, almost $3 trillion market cap right now. But yeah, I think you'll get a 10 to 15% pop on NVIDIA the next day.
It's not even
Amazon will be up 3 to 5%. Meta down 2 to 3%. I agree. It's like, doesn't matter. Whenever Mark Zuckerberg does his conference call, the stock goes down afterward. It's just and then it can go up the next 5, 10 days in a row. But the day after earnings, and by the way, since that's consensus, everybody knows it, forget it.
Yeah.
Amazon up 3%, Meta up 6%, NVIDIA up 10 to 15%. Microsoft is going to miss, and if they miss, they get crushed. I think the stock will be down almost 10% on a miss. And Apple, flattish. Maybe
how'd you do on Tesla?
On a miss.
I watched a little of it. How did you do on Tesla?
We made it at 130 through 150 recently.
You called it like you said that they're going to be up on these 5 things and down on this one thing, and
we were right on almost everything. Bryce's the model that Bryce went through the days before the call itself was, 99% correct. There was very little variance in his model with what the actual results were. The only thing that was off was we didn't know how much Tesla was going to need to take a write down on severance for letting go 20% of their population.
It was a lot.
That number turned out at $0.6 billion, a $600 million 90-day hit. And so it looked like the numbers missed. In reality, they were perfectly in line with expectations and Bryce's model.
All right.
And the stock got hit the next day. Yeah, by about 10 to 15%. And today it was up, bounced back towards those recent highs. Not even the recent highs. It's in a range right now.
Why the dip?
Well, the reported miss was part of it. Just the numbers are tough. Let me give you one more example, and then we'll get off this call. Nobody's getting off the watching though, so I guess we'll keep going anyway. Look, what happened is there's a lot of expectations that the robo-taxi needs to be here and delivered soon, and Elon confirmed that night that it will not happen until October. And I guess he'd already sort of confirmed that, but I think the market was just outright disappointed in that. Bryce, what else? Why does that stock go down the next day? I was going to say you another thing.
There's a lot of reasons. The stock was up huge going into the month of July was just outstanding for Tesla stock, and then
it was up like 50% in a month.
So it just naturally gave back some of that with the miss. I don't know. I saw people thinking that they played with the numbers on EV credits, that their EV credit revenue really came in strong, and nobody.
Well, they did. It was double what it had been the prior quarter, prior 4 quarters in a row.
And so they say that's not real revenue.
But the reason why was because Ford and GM and the ones who pay Tesla, who buy those EV credits. Let's back up. I'm not sure everybody understands this Republican Democrat regime scam here. So what happens is they've got rules that you can't sell as many internal combustion gasoline engines in the future and this year and last year as you could 10, 20, 30 years ago. And if you're selling gasoline burning engines and not EVs or hybrids on the way towards EVs, then you have to buy tax credits from someone who is selling EVs. And so when GM and Ford realize they can't make an EV and make any money, and that their software sucks and that they're horrible at EVs, they were like, well, shit, we better stop making EVs. Let's go back to making ICE vehicles. And when they got back to making ICE vehicles, they got to go give Tesla literally billions of dollars every quarter.
It's ridiculous.
It's so stupid. But that's truly that's where the Republican Democrat regime compromised. The Democrats were like, we got to tax carbon. And the Republicans were like, well, make it a free market tax.
A what?
A free market tax. And what that is, we'll make those evil companies that aren't doing what we want have to buy credits from companies who are doing it. And so it's a transfer of wealth between those two companies, those two things directly, but it's not a real free market, obviously, but there is a free market for EV credits now. So, but EV credit wouldn't exist if not for regulation. So that's why I said an EV.
It's a lot like a carbon offset.
It's the same thing. It's literally that same thing. Yeah, that's the scam. Yeah, it's like also charter schools, for example. We're going to tax people, but we'll call it free market because we'll give it to a private company that's doing a shitty job at a charter school instead of to the public school system. But we're still taxing
Or like somebody sends their kid to private school and they pay the tax that you pay to send kids to public school.
I'm okay with that.
I know you are. That's why I brought it up. So it's the exact. So it's like it depends on how you look at it, whether you look at it intelligently or like Cody. So,
Ouch.
I'm going to go ask ChatGPT what the intelligent answer is.
Oh, it'll tell you for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will not be a libertarian answer.
It will not be.
Yeah.
No.
For the record, I always lean libertarian, but I get really mad when Republicans pretend that they're like for free markets and they're creating more. Like charter schools are not free markets.
No.
Private schools are free markets. Charter schools are a tax grift. That's it.
It's a grift. Yes, it's a grift. And they don't teach the kids. They should teach the kids about grifts.
Mark Zuckerberg and Jensen Huang are doing a fireside chat right now. And so
it's a lot like ours.
The AI people should go watch that.
Wait, are you like telling people we're here to go somewhere else?
I want to go watch the fireside chat.
He's like the NBC-owned Golf Channel when the Masters is on, and they're like, hey, you got to go to CBS to watch that great golf.
Yeah.
So, no, you brought up sports, not me. So did I mention that my nephew hit?
Here we go again with that.
He hit a walk-off last night.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool, except that it's the Astros.
Oh, get over it. So just you'll feel better.
No, I won't. I like carrying around anger at all sports, which is ironic because I am a sports guy, but I'm mad at the corruption of all professional stadiums. I'm mad at the corruption of all the big college sports. I'm mad at the corruption and that opening ceremony thing at the Olympics. I wasn't going to watch the Olympics anyway, but then I saw Friday night. My wife and I were like, why is everybody mad at Netflix and the Olympics? At least conservatives are. And I was like, I don't know. So then we typed in Netflix Olympics controversy and found nothing. We were both so confused because everybody on her feed was like, I'm quitting Netflix and the Olympics, blah, blah, boycott, da, da, da. We're like, what happened? And so it turns out that the Olympics did this really horrible opening ceremony that was basically sacrilegious.
Beyond sacrilegious, they had like some like things showing on the screen as in body parts.
There's literally ball sacks hanging out.
And you got kids like watching the Olympics, and it's like, really, maybe should it be up to some folks to decide whether they want their kids to, that was it.
Yes, agreed. And so so then I'm like, all right, well, I'm mad at the Olympics too. But then everybody's mad at Netflix because the founder of Netflix, who's a lifelong Democrat, gave $7 million to the horrible Kamala Harris. But what are you boycotting him for? You guys are going to get mad at people boycotting Elon Musk because he's supporting Trump. But you're going to get to boycott the guy who gave money to support your opposition.
Here he goes. Did you know he was going to go off like this?
Or not.
Bryce, has he had his medicine?
This is my medicine. This call is my medicine, John.
Yeah, no, you're right. They better choose more carefully about their boycotts because it's just
you
doesn't
can't
work.
you can boycott the Olympics for the the ball sacks. You
You
can't.
know what? Am I going to have to like censor this whole thing here for?
Would you rather me say scrotum?
I just said anatomical. I left it.
But
at
I
that.
was being explicit.
You were being explicit. Exactly. Now
But
we got
not-
to put a rating on the thing.
This is not. I do not believe that the word, like, you could carry
No, don't say what
a
the word
stack
again.
of baskets. If you had a bag of
No.
basketballs, it would be a
No.
ball sack. That's all I was talking about.
Bryce,
Yes.
I apologize on behalf of.
Hey, you're the one who
Your old
brought us
friend.
here. You're like sports.
Well,
Yeah. All right. Who knew it would devolve?
Let's
But it
Go
did.
Bregmans.
at the end of the day, there's plenty of good reasons to boycott damn near every American corporation if you want to find those. And so I would people were mad at Target last year for having LGBTQ stuff, and then Walmart had the same stuff, and nobody even talked about it. So it's like, just if you're going to be mad about something, be mad about it across the board,
Where
right?
did you-
Yeah,
where
don't
did you
just
buy yours
don't
from?
go with the manufactured anger that you saw on your particular news outlet.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
get
think-
angry like I do about everything.
Bryce, where did you end up buying from?
Amazon.
Target or Walmart?
Amazon.
The anti-LGBTQ company Amazon.
Yeah.
No, where he bought that particular merchandise. Don't miss my joke here when I'm trying to.
Oh, Bryce is you're calling
Because he
him.
was, where did he pick up the stuff? And he could, it's not even which is fine.
I don't think
It's
Bryce
not-
would be
who
ashamed of
cares?
that. He's it's
Who cares if it's the case? It's not even a thing. So anyway,
nothing wrong with wearing a rainbow pin, Bryce. It's
whatever,
fine.
it's all good. So like when I first got into like social media stuff, business, what was interesting was that up to around 2009, 2010, the only way you could talk to some big company was to call their 1-800 number. And then the only thing they could say to you was whatever was on their script. So there was no way to really have any kind of dialogue with a company. And then came Twitter and other things popped in and so forth in 2011, 2012 and so forth. And suddenly companies started using it as a new channel of communication with customers, a way to have a different conversation, for that conversation to go differently. And so now I'm hoping and expecting that with AI, and as we have more chat going on and the way that it sort of reaches in and it's your chat talking to their chat, or you're talking to AIs from the company that have a whole lot behind what they say and can carry on a conversation with you and can say, no, I get what you're saying, and I'm going to take that back to them. And they tried that last year, but it blah, blah, blah. Like you're really talking to the company like you can't do. Like, so I'm really hoping for a new kind of dialogue to open up between business and consumer.
Yeah. And it's probably happening. Again, you could put the Coca-Cola's entire customer service facing handbooks, rules, guidelines, everything, goals into a GPT, train it, and then have it train individuals or even just interact itself.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be clear here, Bryce. I don't think there's any other, as bad as American corporations are, they're probably not as bad as like French corporations or Zimbabwean corporations or Guatemalan corporations. Like, it's like, like there's a reason to boycott every country, every corporation, like the only thing that you don't really, and actually even in individuals, there's probably reasons to boycott John Dio.
Doesn't matter. I'm going to move to the country, and you won't be able to find me on my rural land that I won't tell you where it is. And oh wait, Cody already lives on rural land, so
getting my Tesla batteries and solar installed in the next few months, and then I'm truly off grid. You guys will never find me again.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Regardless of our political differences, we all find plenty of reasons to go ahead and utilize Apple services and Facebooks and Ford Motor Company, right? Like, we enjoy those conveniences. So
that's part of my politics is, having the best products from, that I can find. So
All All right. Well, this turned into a political bashing, and we went from like learning about AI to mocking the Republican Democrat regime and its policies of carbon private market taxes.
It's all
And-
connected.
As hedge fund guys, we're actually very pro corporate in practice, so it's a bit ironic.
In practice, I've talked about this. No, I literally have talked about this for years. I used to, when I was writing for thestreet.com, and I would be all anti-corporation and certainly seriously anti-corporate welfare of any sort, any protections for corporations, any voice for corporations. I'm against any of that. And people are like, well, don't you invest in corporations for a living? And I'm like, I have to separate what I do for a living from my voting and my social beliefs, like my morals and ethics. Like you can't avoid it. You literally got to drive on the public roads and you got to use a computer.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
No easy answer.
That's our world.
Yeah. All right. I got to go to church. I'll see you guys later.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for watching. We'll be
Thanks,
here
everybody.
at the same AI channel, same time next week.
See ya.
Hearts.
Bye.
Bye, guys.